Being great at sales is essential to your business and your career, but you and I both know that the stress of selling and dealing with constant rejection can be an emotional drain. My entire brand, No BS Selling, is based on the belief that professional sales is a skill and not a personality, and that to be better at sales takes constant refinement and a dedication to your craft. This show is for salespeople and entrepreneurs who are committed to improving their sales skills and getting better results, and are sick and tired of the BS game that often happens between buyers and sellers. Welcome to the No BS Sales Podcast, and I'm your host, Walker McKay. I'll help you and your sales team make selling easier, feel less cheesy, and be more lucrative. It's time to change the rules and level the playing field between you and the people you sell to. You're already good, let's be better. Welcome to the No BS Sales School Podcast, and I'm your host, Walker McKay. I want you to listen to this episode today because I'm going to talk about why and how to earn the right to give your prospect a solution to a problem. How and why. I think it's super important to know this. To be honest, it's not something I do really well all the time. It's something I struggle with. I've got to remind myself. I was reminded by my marriage coach, counselor, that I'm a fixer. And I know stuff, and I want to jump in and fix stuff, but often by jumping in and fixing stuff, I'm making other people mad. And so this definitely relates to business. So I thought before I go there, I want to tell you a joke. Little boy comes up to his dad and said, "Dad, what's a podcast?" His father thought about it for a second and said, "Well, son, when two men love their opinions very, very much." Crack me up. All right, so let's go back on to why and how. So I'm gonna tell you a story. Years ago, I walked into my class in Greenville, had a bunch of clients there. One of my favorite clients was a lady named Jamie. It's not a real name, by the way. And Jamie was from a little town outside of Greenville that used to be kind of a rough and tumble town. Now it's kind of a fancy, urban, hipster town. But she was from the rough and tumble part. She's beautiful. She's a weightlifter, big muscles, big hair. Jamie's fiance of 9 years had given her a nickel-plated .45 as an engagement present instead of a ring, because as she said, nothing says love like a Colt .45. So anyway, she was hilarious. She was funny, and I didn't ever want to cross her because she was tough as nails. I think she sold logistics. Anyway, walked into class one morning, and she said, "You look like shit," which, by the way, is a great way to greet people. It's pretty funny. It catches them off guard every single time, which it did me. And even though I used that, it caught me off guard. And I said to Jamie, "I've got insomnia." And she said, "You should eat more fish." At which point I noticed that bombs went off in my head. I was like, what the hell? And my first thought was, idiot, not about me, but about her. And I didn't say that out loud because she would have killed me. So I finished on with class, and I was driving home, and I said, "Why did you respond that way? What was it in you that made your brain, why did bombs go off? Why did you get angry or frustrated?" Because Jamie just wanted to help. What was the problem? And as I said that out loud, I started to process it. And I said, what's interesting is maybe if she'd approached it a different way, because she didn't understand my problem. I didn't think, right? I didn't think. We all believe our problems are different and special. How many of you go into a sales call, you go call on somebody who's an ideal prospect for you, and maybe they have a similar problem that a lot of your other prospects have, and you know what to do, right? They say, "I've got this problem, A, B, and C." And you say, "Okay, you just got to do this." And they don't buy. Sometimes they're using free consulting. But a lot of times, maybe you're suggesting something that's already been done.
or something they've already thought of, or something that everybody else has suggested and hadn't worked. Or maybe you just hadn't earned the right to give that yet. They didn't think you understood the problem because their problem is special. So I realized that was probably what was going on in my mind. So as I'm driving home, I started thinking about it. So what if Jamie had approached it a different way? So I learned this thing, listened to a podcast, that the brain can process ideas at somewhere around, average brain, around 1,500 words a minute. And yet, even a fast talker like me talks somewhere between 90 and 120 words a minute. So at any given time, I'm not very good at math, but it's about 8%. If you ask somebody a question, you'll get about 8%, 7 to 8% of what they're actually thinking about. 7 to 8%, 7 to 8% with one question. So all of a sudden, so as I further listen, wow, that's fascinating because I do it all the time, and I'm ADHD, so my brain probably, I don't know, maybe it goes faster than that. Doesn't mean I'm smarter, it just means my brain goes faster. And I talk fast to try and make up for it. But what if, the key to this was to ask follow-up questions. And that was what the point of the podcast was that since the brain can only process, you can only speak 7 or 8% of what you're thinking, and generally the other person just moves on to another question, that all you're getting 7 to 8% of what that person really thinks about a subject. And that by asking follow-up questions, you can then pick up another, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8% every time you ask a follow-up question. That's pretty interesting to me to hear. And I thought more about my ride home. And I said, what if that conversation with Jamie had gone differently? What if instead she had said, insomnia? Huh. Tell me more about that. I'd say, well, I go to sleep at 10 o'clock at night, exhausted. And I wake up about 1:30 in the morning, like a shotgun's gone off in my room, bolt up in bed. And I'm awake until about 5. And at that point, I fall dead asleep until 5:20, when my dear little 6-month-old son wakes up. At that point, nobody's sleeping. Huh, Walker, interesting. Can you give me a specific example? I'm like, yeah, last night. Went to bed at 10:15. Woke up at 1:30, walked around the house for about an hour, sat up and read for about an hour, got into bed about 4, fell asleep about 5, woke up at 5:20. Wow. She might have then asked, how often does that happen? I'd say, I don't know, 6 days a week, 5? Goodness gracious. What have you tried to do about it? And I might have said, well, let's see. I've changed up my exercise schedule so that try to exercise in the morning instead of at night, which is hard because I'm exhausted. Changed my diet, taken some of these herbal supplements. I've gone to a witch doctor. I've been to a regular doctor. Taken medicine, been the chiropractor. She might have then asked what sounds like a stupid question. Any of that stuff work? To which I would have responded, no. She might have said, wow, Walker, sorry. What do you think that's cost you? Time, energy, emotion? And I would have said, shit, I don't know. I'm grumpy all the time. I'm not effective in my business. Really can't, my ADD is much worse because I hadn't gotten to sleep. I can't focus at work. I'm not making prospecting calls. Probably not very effective with my clients right now. My classes suck. My wife's mad at me because I'm grumpy all the time. My child, 6 months old, already thinks I'm a crazy man because I'm so grumpy. Walker, can you put a number on that? God, I guess at work it's probably cost me, I don't know, $100,000 in missed opportunities. Home, God knows I don't know what a divorce is worth. She might have said, wow, really? Think $100,000? And a divorce? I mean, shit's probably cost me more than $100,000. No divorce yet, but who knows? And she might have said, what happens if you don't fix it? And I would have said, oh my God, I'll be dead. I'll be out of business and dead and divorced. Not sure which is worse. Then she might have said, what do you think you need to do next? And I said, hell, I don't know. And then she might have said, are you open to outside suggestions of how to fix that stuff? And I would have certainly said, hell yes, I am. And she might say to me, you know, I've had a friend who had a very similar problem. And they did a bunch of research, talked to a bunch of people, and they figured out that the omega-3s in salmon and in almonds really help calm the brain and helped her learn to sleep. And so she just added salmon, a lot of salmon, you know, 2 or 3 times, 3 or 4 times a week to her diet, and took almonds to work. She did a handful of almonds in the morning and a handful in the afternoon. And she found, not immediately, but in a couple days, a week later, she started to sleep better. So she's continued keeping that in her diet. I don't know. You think that would work for you? If the conversation had gone that way, you know what I would have done? I'd have gone to the grocery store as soon, probably ought to cancel class, gone to the grocery store as soon as I could. I'd have loaded the car up with salmon and almonds, and I probably would have eaten it all on the way home. Same message, same advice given after she'd earned the right to give it to me. Now understand, Jamie and I were friends, and she was a client of mine, and I knew her well. But I still, when she made the suggestion without digging deeper, my first response was, idiot, defensive. I wonder how many, if any, of your prospects or clients or customers have said idiot to themselves or after you left when you made a suggestion without earning the right to make the suggestion, before you dug deeper and figured out their problem, before you made them feel like you really understood them. More than answers, people want to be understood. It's the craziest thing in the whole world, but it's true. They want to be understood. And we all have this idea in our head, this funny thing, cognitive dissonance, I think is the fancy word for it. We have these two ideas, one where we believe on one hand that everybody in the world is either like us or should be like us, that our experience is somehow normal, right? What we've experienced in life is normal. This is what normal looks like. The only head we've ever lived in, most of us, is our own, right? So that's what's normal. However you grew up, whatever you believe, whatever you think, this is what's, everybody else in the world should either believes this or should believe this. And on the other hand, we have this idea that we're special and different. We're all freaking snowflakes, right? So it's funny how those two things don't really match. They're kind of opposites. And people need both sides of those things affirmed. So when you're having conversations with your prospects or your family members or your friends, before you jump to offer a quick solution, and by the way, I suck at this. I'm not telling you this as I'm great at this, because anybody that's listening to this, a friend of mine, knows that I will freaking jump to a solution, especially with a friend, in a heartbeat without digging deep enough. But it's a great place to practice. Seek to understand first. Have the conversations with your buddies, with your friends, with your family. That's a great place to practice digging deeper, seeking to understand. Guys, the podcast is spreading. It's getting out a lot. I appreciate you very much. Many of you have rated and reviewed it. That really helps me when you do that. Wherever you're listening to the podcast, if you can rate it and review it, maybe even share an episode if you like it. Also, I've got a newsletter that goes out every week. It shares stuff that I'm reading, maybe some videos I've produced, episode of the podcast, maybe listen there. And a book review sometimes. Some cool stuff I'm reading to try and keep myself up to date that I feel like sharing with you guys might be good. If you want to get on the newsletter list, text the letters NOBS, to the number 66866. Text NOBS, no spaces, to the number 66866. Also, just FYI, if anybody's interested, I'm opening up a one-on-one coaching program. I'm going to take a few people, higher level salespeople or entrepreneurs who've got to go build a company, build a team, and they want some help, want an outside advice on how to do that. So I'm opening that up. I started this month. So if that's something you're interested in, reach out to me, walker@walkermckay.com, or call me, 803-917-2817. No BS sales team, you guys are great. I love hearing from you. I appreciate you reaching out to me and telling me what you learned. That's super helpful to me. It's encouraging to me. I'm lonely over here sometimes. Go get them. And don't tell people to eat more fish.